You talking about the core value? How was it?
We actually, with my wife, we started in November. We started doing some reading.
Yeah.
Financially, so we got a budget on goal in December. So it was a little bit big because I tried to make it just financial.
Yeah.
Like, because we have relationship and other goals.
You didn't put those in?
No, he said, so I took that one out. So if you want me, you can bring them up right there.
What about
I'll try to see if we have some left.
You weren't here last week?
No, but I did my assignment.
That's great. How'd you do that?
I called them, sent it to the assignment. Watch your video.
Did you watch the video?
I did.
It's going to be better this
It's
time because I was the camera.
pretty close.
Oh, that's good. What's your name?
Ron.
Ron, I'm Jay. Nice to meet you.
That's just the cover. So
Oh,
if you want to separate level 1 from level 2.
Yes.
So is there a book or something?
Yeah.
A reference?
Yes. The glass Blu-ray, that gentleman there, just say that. Did you sign in?
Yes, I did. I'm just gonna sign my name there.
Yeah. Just let him know that you weren't here, and he'll give you a book. Because he'll want the book.
Oh yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad that you're already.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, sure.
Did you go too?
Yeah.
Oh, there's another one here.
Are any of these yours? Ten cards.
Yeah, just over there. You have the assignments.
Yeah. You guys want to hand in your assignments?
That's okay, it happens.
No, it's all right. What's your name on it?
Yes, people feel. Sorry?
You handed in?
Oh, no. I didn't know we had to hand it in.
Of course.
I would have done what
I'm not gonna get you to mark it.
Oh, this just, you can put it here. That's why it's, because some people
Oh, yeah,
are
it's
doing
in the
level
front?
1. So this is where 1 is.
You're in two.
I give you an I don't know.
Can you pass me one of those sketch pen, the color pen? Yeah, the color pen to
Come up with something.
Do you want them to hand in the business news one before or after they speak?
Before.
No, don't worry, it's fine.
I'm sure you'll remember what you wrote, won't you?
No, I thought it was just for discussion. I didn't know that.
She was just saying it should have done a neater.
A little neater.
It's okay, I can read it.
Well, are you sure?
So, any announcements? Did anyone here have issues with the email? Accessing the live stream at home by any chance? So if there was anyone who had any problems with it, just let me know. There were a few people who were not here last week who are here this week, so glad to see that you're here. That's a really good resource for you if you do happen to be away. You can still watch the class online, and then you can contact Jay by email for the homework, and then he can send you the homework, or you can email me even, and I can send you the homework so that you can catch up even if you're away. Outside of that, I think just a normal class.
Just a normal class, okay, good. How's everyone doing? Good. Who's first time here tonight? Okay, so a few people, welcome. And the rest of you were here last week, so you came back. Wow, excellent. Good, so why don't we start? Like we said, we're gonna try to start at 7 o'clock, so appreciate you guys being here on time. So let's start with business in the news. Anybody want to share what they heard in the news and that you handed in over the last week? Go ahead.
I heard that IBM, what was it? They had goals for this year, but they didn't achieve them, and they had them last year, but they did, and I don't think they're going to be achieving any of their goals anytime soon.
Okay, so what kind of goals did they not achieve? Did you read it into that? What was it?
I don't remember all of it, but I'm pretty sure. I don't remember all of it right now, but I'll think of it.
Okay, no problem. So it's probably they didn't achieve their sales goals. They probably didn't achieve their dividends, their profit. We're going to talk a little bit about budgeting tonight, which is all about meeting a goal. So that's good. Thanks, Adam. Anybody else?
Home price slash down.
Sorry?
In real estate, home price slash down.
Okay.
So the average price is now it's almost 5 lakhs.
Okay.
So I think it's the best time to buy new home.
Good. Okay. Now, are you talking in Fort McMurray or in Canada? What was
in
the?
Canada.
Yeah. So there was an article that talked about that home prices in Canada have gone down almost everywhere, and some places more than others. In Alberta, I think it went down a little bit more than the rest of the country. So that's good news for people that are looking to buy, and also for people that are looking to invest, right? Because rental properties are a bit cheaper now. Okay, good.
Where are the renters?
I'm sorry?
Where are the renters?
Where are the renters?
There are no renters.
There are no renters?
No, I don't think. Like not as much as.
You know what? I always find that there's always people renting. There's always people that that, either, it's not the right time to buy, or they're in different stages of life where they're trying to, kind of make enough money to put down a down payment. So there's always a market for renters. It's just a matter of finding them, right? Okay, excellent. Anything else? Go ahead.
I was reading about that China used to be buying the gas and oil from the western side of Canada,
Right,
but they were doing the negotiations when the price was pretty low.
right.
Now that the price is going up, they actually decided not to continue buying from the western Canada oil. So that just reflects that it's gonna be less amount of gas because it's less amount of oil that it will be supplied to
China.
to China in this case.
Yeah.
It goes related to the pipeline situation.
Right. Yeah, the whole pipeline situation is very important, which is why I think, today's election, obviously, hopefully those that were eligible to vote voted. And then the federal election that's coming up. Okay, so good. That's the kind of news that we're kind of looking for. Continue to listen. Okay, so next week, same assignment that you did this week. What's in the news? What are you learning? Right? Continue to, kind of look at the news so that you can increase your financial knowledge. Great. So the other one was around banking. How did you find the assignment on banking? Pretty easy? Pretty simple? Okay. Who actually looked at their bank account and determined what was like? Go ahead.
Before I joined this class, I used to check my bank account every time whenever anything purchase was okay, because I used to working in accounting department.
Right.
So whenever I have seen lots of customers, sometimes it's double paid or sometimes it's something like that happens. So I know what is the problem with the debit card or credit card.
Right.
So
Good. Okay. Anyone else? What'd you find in that assignment? About your own bank account? Did you find out how it works? Anybody? Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead, Mark.
Just in one question regarding to the banking, it's I find out what actually fund we're using with my wife, but then the only question I got is every single time I buy, that's considered one transaction.
Every time you buy
something, that's considered one
okay.
transaction. That is a question that I got from all the assignments that I made. Like I find out which funds we're using and everything. But then my question is, it's a transaction every time you use the debit, consider a transaction.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So you have to be careful because you need to know how that kind of works and how many transactions are free before you start paying, right?
Mm-hmm. For example, in my country, we used to just if you use the ATM was considered a charge.
Okay.
They charge you for you had like 10 times free to
right.
use it, but then they charge you every time you use the ATM.
Yeah. So it's very similar. Here ATMs are free if you use your own bank, but if you go to another bank, then they charge you a fee, right? So every country is different. Okay, good. So that's great. So can we put up the quote there? Please. So this is a quote that I came across a couple of weeks ago, which was kind of interesting, and I shared it with the level 2 class. But it says that people do not decide their futures; they decide their habits, and then their habits decide their futures. Right? So a lot of times, the reason why we kind of do some of these things is to get you into a good habit, a habit that, again, listening to the news, because in the news, like we talked about, you're going to hear about when is it a good time to buy IBM? When is it a good time to buy Boeing? When is it a good time to look for a house, right? If you're not listening to the news, if you're not reading the news, you're not going to know about that, right? So that's one of those things that is a good habit to get into, because if you continue to do that over time, your financial knowledge increases. And when your financial knowledge increases, you make good financial decisions that really affect your future. Okay? So I was Does anybody know who Warren Buffett is? Who said yes? Anybody?
Richest man.
Sorry?
Richest man in the world.
He's one of the richest individuals in the world. Yeah, okay. So
He's investment guru.
yeah, he's an investment guru. Okay, yeah. So
His shares were like, they are worth so much, right? Like the Berkshire Hathaway,
yeah,
more
He-
than 200,000 or something.
yeah, exactly. So he's the main investor in the company Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, and their shares, I think, are at, don't quote me on this, over $200,000 US for one share, because it's never split. The value of the share has been going up for the last 30 years. Okay, so he's one of the most successful investors in the world, and he's about 80 years old now. He's from, I think, Oklahoma or something like that in the States. So one of the richest individuals in the world. And remember last week we talked about the importance of, we talked about RAT, right? Read your material, apply the information, and then if you really want to master it, teach somebody, right? So this was really interesting. I came across this about a couple of months ago. And so Warren Buffett was being interviewed, because he gets interviewed all the time, right? Because people want to know, okay, how do you do it? You know, how can you be successful over all these years? And so they asked him, you know, what's been your best investment so far? So when you think about this guy, one of the richest persons in the world, you would think that he would say, I bought this company at whatever, $1, and I sold it for, you know, $10,000 a share or something like that. So this is what he says. His all best investment was a Dale Carnegie public speaking course. So Dale Carnegie, he's a guy that he teaches people how to communicate with people, how to publicly speak. Okay, so his best investment was a Dale Carnegie public speaking course taken at age 20. Prior to that, Buffett would vomit, before public speaking. After the course, and this is the critical piece, Buffett immediately went to the University of Omaha and asked to teach, as he didn't want to lapse back into the old behaviors. Buffett said, investing in yourself is the most important investment you'll ever make in your life. There's no financial investment that will ever match it, because if you develop more skill, more ability, more insight, more capacity, that's what's really going to provide economic freedom. It's those skills sets that make it really happen. Wow, is that interesting? Okay, so he thought it was important to invest in himself, which is hopefully what you're doing here, right? You're investing in yourself. And the important thing about it was that he went out and he tried to apply that as soon as possible. He didn't wait. He didn't wait for a perfect time, right? Because there's no perfect time, believe it or not. There's always people that say, someday I'll do it, right? Someday I'll start the diet. I'll start the diet on Monday, right? Every Monday, everybody starts a diet. I don't know why. And then Mondays happen, and next thing you know, it's 2 years later, you haven't started the diet. But next month, there's always a next Monday, right? So he went out, took the course, invested in himself, and then he applied it as soon as possible. Because what happens if you don't apply it? Exactly. It's easy to just say, forget it, right? And that's the same with this course, right? Most people will have more information than they'll ever use because they never apply it. So that's the importance of doing the homework, right? Applying, reading, and actually telling somebody about it. Tell somebody at home, whatever, what you learned. Because once you do that, it always stays in here. Okay, good. Last week we talked about banking. Can we just do that short video on banking. So this is a commercial that I came across, which was, again, kind of interesting.
Can I put my hockey card collection into an RRSP? Can I put a mutual fund in an RESP and then use that money to go to school and learn what a mutual fund is? Can I put a GIC in a TFSA in an investment portfolio like a turducken of savings? That's a good idea. I mean, I'll do that.
Get award-winning advice and more. Take 20 minutes with RBC and experience the difference.
So that's a commercial from Royal Bank, right? And it's what it's getting at is that there's so much information out there, and sometimes we don't even know what it is. And you notice that he used so many different acronyms, right? RESP, RRSP, TFSA, and it can get pretty confusing out there. But that's why it's important for you to understand these concepts, because when you go to the bank, you want to be able to talk intelligently, right? Ask the right questions so that you can make good financial decisions, right? But this is really an interesting commercial because it just focuses in on how confusing it can get for individuals if you don't know. Okay? Good. So why don't we start with the next lesson? So we're going to talk about budgeting now. Okay? Anybody know what a budget is? What's a budget?
Planning.
Okay.
Financial planning.
Okay. It's a plan. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So anybody work for a company here? Who works for a company? Ron, where do you work?
High power systems.
Okay. And what do you guys do?
We do hydraulics. We support the oil sand companies.
Okay.
For business.
Okay. So as a company, you must have a budget.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And what are you measuring in that budget?
We measure all our expenses for the whole year.
Okay.
Like, let's say maintenance for our vehicles, all that stuff.
Okay.
All the pay for the employees.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
All that stuff.
And what are you selling? What are you selling as a company?
Well, we sell our service, products as well,
Okay.
and in-house maintenance service.
Okay. So you probably have a budget for how many clients you're going to get,
That's right, yeah.
how many products you're going to sell, all those things. Okay. Who else works for a company? Go ahead.
I work with Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo,
Okay.
and I'm a finance officer, so we do the capital budgeting part of it.
Okay. So you're looking at what, money coming in because you're a municipality?
Not exactly coming in. We are more towards spending part. So
Okay.
for the capital projects or infrastructure.
Yeah. So you put together a plan based on what you think you're going to spend.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Good. Yeah. So those are excellent points. So every company that I know of has a budget. Okay. Let's use an oil company because that's where we are. Okay. So in an oil company, really what they're looking at is mainly a few things. So you have companies. So an oil company is what? What do they do? What do they produce? Oil. Excellent. Okay. So every company, I work for Syncrude. Okay. So for example, our budget is, for example, 100 million barrels of oil for the year. Okay. That's the product that we're in the business in. So that's the budget. And then we also look at our costs, right? So that's another part of a budget. So it's very important for companies to do that, because if you don't have a budget, you don't meet your goals. Because what happens is companies have goals. They want to have a profit of a certain amount. Well, a budget is really a plan to get there. Okay. Yeah. Big companies like again, Syncrude will have expenses. They'll have sales as a budget. Also, workforce. How many people, are you going to have in your company? All budget. And every month it's tracked against that plan to see where you are. Because if you don't have a plan, how do you know if you're above it or below it? Okay. Governments also have budgets, right? Believe it or not. So what do governments do other than take our money? Sorry?
Taxes.
Yeah, so they take in taxes, so that's how they make money. And then what do they do with the money? Yeah, they have services, right?
Services.
Lots of times they waste it, but what they're supposed to do is provide services for the citizens of in Canada, for example, at a federal level, Alberta at a provincial level, and then the municipality here, right? So they take in money. So they take in tax revenue, and then they have programs, services, whatever, expenses. And then if they take in more money than they have programs, what's that called? A surplus, right? It means they have more money. And if they have less money coming in than programs, what is it called? A deficit. Right? So you'll hear a lot about this at all government levels where they say, we're going to run a deficit this year. That means that they're going to be spending, they're promising to spend more than they're taking in, which is not good. But remember, what are governments in power to do? To govern, right? And what do they want to do? They want to make people happy because their goal is to get reelected the next 4 years, right? So what they do is they try to cater to all the groups. So they say, okay, we're going to do this program and this program and that program, right? So those people are going to vote for that party next time around, right? But they're using really our money. And most governments today are running deficits. Now, when you run a deficit year after year, that becomes what? Debt. Okay? So when you're looking at financial planning, you don't want to run your home like the government. Because think about it, if every month you ran a deficit, what would happen to your finances? You would be in debt, right? And you would be paying interest at a high rate. But the government doesn't care, right? Because they're using our money and really they're not worried about the next government coming in, right? So they make a lot of promises. So then what happens is that eventually you get some politicians that say, we got to reduce the debt because we can't go on forever. In the United States, the debt is trillions of dollars. Think about that. Just the interest on that is hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. Just the interest. So you don't want to run your home like the government. And that's why it's important to have a budget, and that's what we're gonna talk about tonight. Okay. So let's go to your books here. Okay. So this is one of the lessons that I've got from it's called from Money Mentors. It's a really good organization that teaches individuals about financial concepts. Okay. So what's a budget? A budget is a spending plan or process that helps you pay for living expenses, pay off debts, decide what you can afford, save toward your financial goals, have money for the things you want to do. In other words, a budget helps you get as much as possible for each dollar. A budget puts you in the driver's seat. It's not a rigid set of rules. It's a tool that you design to give yourself flexibility and choice about how you use your money. So a budget, this is not like, a company where you're counting every dollar, every cent, right? When you do your budget for home, really you just want to get a plan in place so that you can monitor money that's coming in and money that's going out so that you can reach some goals. Okay? So, the first thing we teach people to do is look at establishing a financial goal. Before you create a budget, you need to know what you want to achieve. So the only reason you have a budget, so the only reason Syncrude has a budget is because they want to produce oil, and they want to produce record-breaking oil. They want to produce 100 million barrels of oil a year, so they need to have a budget. So it's the same with you. Okay, there's no use having a budget if you don't even have a goal. So it starts with goal. In level 2, we get into your goals and your core values. But just for here, it's a lot easier to budget if you know what you're going to do with it. Okay, what is your financial goal? What would you like to do with the money that's left at the end of the month? Do you want to pay off a loan, go on a vacation? And deciding on your financial goal is the first step in taking control of your money. Okay, so if you look at the financial goals worksheet, okay, it's broken down into different types of goals. There's short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And you'll notice that the goal is, written down as, I want an emergency fund. In a year, it's going to cost $1,200, and this is what I need to do. I need to put away $100 each payday into a savings account. Okay, it's an example of a short-term goal. Medium-term goals are little 1 to 3 years. I want to pay off my credit cards in 2 years. So what's it going to cost? And I need to make $120 payment each month to pay off those credit cards. And then you get into long-term goals. Long-term goals are, a little bit longer, obviously. Here it says 4 to 24 years. Here is saving. I want to put a minimum of $85 a month into RESPs. So those are registered education savings plans for kids, and save 25% of any raises I get. Okay, the goal is to save for the child's education. You're going to do it over 18 years. It's going to cost about $18,000, and that's how you're going to do it. So when it comes to goals, there's an acronym called SMART that you'll want to remember because it's going to be on your assignment. And anybody know what SMART stands for when it comes to goals? Those of you that are in level 2 should know.
Set, measure.
I'm sorry?
Set and then measure. Is it that kind of thing? I don't know.
No. SMART means that the goal is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and there's a time frame. And the reason why this is good to know is because when you talk to people, I talk to people all the time about finances and money, and most people say, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be rich. Okay, nice. Okay, but is that specific? No, it isn't. So specific means I want to save, for example, $2,000 a year to pay off my mortgage. Okay, so it's specific, it's measurable, and then you can measure it because at the end of the year, right? If we look at Syncrude as a company, their goal is to produce 100 million barrels of oil in 2019, let's say. It's specific. It's measurable because at the end of the year, you're going to know whether they achieve that or not. It's achievable because they can do it. The plant can actually produce that. It's realistic. That's a little bit like achievable because it's not like 300 million barrels a year. It's realistic. It's achievable. And then there's a time frame to it. So whenever you write out a goal, those are the things that you want to keep in mind. The more specific you are, the more likely you're going to achieve it. The more general you are, the more you're going to think, doesn't matter. All right? Okay, any questions on that? So think about your own goals. What do you want to achieve in the short term, medium, long term? Think about that, and this week, just write them in that financial worksheet to help you get going. Okay. Okay, so let's go with the next part. So whenever you're doing a budget, the first thing that you're going to look at is income. What money is coming into your home? How much money do you have to work with? Okay, where does your money come from? What income can you count on getting every month? Some sources of income will be listed below. Okay, you can add up your total income for the last 12 months and divide it by 12 to get an idea. Okay, so if you look at my income worksheet, most people will have this coming in. It's going to be their primary income, so they're working for a company or they have a small business and they're getting wages or salary. They may have a second job, so you can add secondary income. There's the child tax credit. We're going to learn about that when we talk about government-sponsored programs. But that's if you have children, the government gives you that small income. That could be part of that. Child support, if you're getting that. Spousal support. And then other regular incomes such as pension or income supplements. Okay? So that's just really a simple. The income part is pretty simple because most people have only a few sources. It's typically from work that you're doing or a business that you own. Okay? Any questions on income? Pretty simple? Okay. So the next part is how do you spend your money? So this is probably the most important part of it because anybody can make money, but you have to know how to manage your money to control what you spend. And this is where people get into trouble, right? That's why there's people that at all levels of income that are in debt. Is because if they make $50,000, they spend more than what they make. They make $100,000, they spend more than what they make. They make $1 million. How many times have you heard of celebrities that make millions of dollars, yet they're filing for bankruptcy and things like that? Why is that? Isn't that enough money? Isn't like $2 million a year enough? Obviously not, because they don't know how to control the spending, right? So controlling the spending is really the key in financial success. Making money is important, but there's rich people that don't make a lot of money. There's a book called, we're going to talk about different books that you should read. One of them that I put up on the list is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I talked about, I think, last week or with level 2. But there's another book called The Wealthy Barber. Anybody ever read that book? It's called The Wealthy Barber. I think it's named by David Chilton. And here's a guy that's a barber. Typically barbers don't make tons of money, but he became wealthy by having a plan. And his plan was that 10% of all the money that he made from his income, he would pay himself. And then he would use that to invest. So before he even started paying off expenses and things, he would pay himself with 10%. And he used that 10% to invest in stocks and real estate. And that's how he became wealthy. So it doesn't matter how much money you make. Again, it's what you do with the money that you have. So that's why when you do a budget, the expense part is very important. Okay? This step could take some work, but the results will be worth it. to make a spending plan that works for you. It helps to know where, when, and why you have been spending the money. Some of the expenses occur each month and don't vary too much. These are expenses like rent, mortgage payments, okay? Writing down everything you spend in a small notebook that fits in your pocket or purse is a good way to start doing that. Keeping receipts, okay? And now, of course, there's tons of apps that you can use that will track your expenses so that you can get an idea how much money you're spending, okay? Now, the thing about this is don't get too, you don't have to, like, there's so many people that get into all the technology that they get frustrated because it's so advanced, okay? It doesn't have to be that way. There are apps to help you out, but, you know, just having a notebook or keeping receipts and doing it just to track your expenses for a month or two so you get an idea of what you're spending is a good way to start. Okay? So like I said, there's monthly expenses. There's also annual expenses. So if you look at that expense worksheet on page 46, you'll see an example of most expenses that people have. There's housing. So you either have a mortgage or you're renting. Insurance, property taxes. If you're living in a condo, there's condo fees. Then you get into the different utilities: power, phone, water, sewage, gas, internet. Then you get into the grocery store one, right? So food typically becomes after, you know, your mortgage payment and that typically becomes one of the biggest expenses that you're going to have. Household incidentals. We talked about banking fees last week, but newspaper subscriptions, alarm, things like that. Then you get into transportation. And this is, again, one of those areas that can be pretty expensive. If you have a vehicle, you have your insurance on your vehicle. Gasoline if you've got a vehicle, or if not, you might have bus or parking. You may have a payment on the vehicle. That's part of the cost. Then you get into personal allowance. So things like, you know, beauty, hair, grooming, that kind of stuff. You get into things like entertainment, which is, you know, lunch, meals. And then you get into stuff like alcohol, cigarette, and lottery tickets, right? On top of that, you might have medical expenses. Okay. Recreation and equipment, there's gym memberships, movies, video games, that type of thing. Life insurance costs. You might have a loan. You might have your credit card payment. Then there's people that give money, you know, for charities, you know, their church, that type of thing. There's child or spousal support, and of course there's daycare. And here's a big one, pets, right? Sometimes people, once you do this exercise and you realize how much you spend on a pet, you kind of think, oh man. It's kind of funny, this year for in our company at Syncrude, we're actually offering pet insurance as a benefit for employees to use. And everybody just can't wait to get into it. And the reason why is because if you have a pet, who has a pet, right? It can be very expensive, right? Veterinarian bills, right? So all this costs money, right? Part of expense. Those were kind of monthly expenses that people would have. Then you have annual expenses. So things like vehicle maintenance, registration for your vehicle, clothing, of course. People spend a lot of money on clothes. There's maintenance and renovations. There's education, obviously, if you're going to school. Medical expenses, again. There's seasonal sports and recreation. Then you get into gifts and festivities, right? There's people that spend a lot of money. I remember when my little guy was growing up, it was like every week he was at a birthday party, right? Yeah, everyone knows that. Well, that costs money over time, right? Travel and vacation, of course, that's an expense. So those are the kind of things that people spend money on, right? And it's important to collect that information at least once or have an idea. But what you do is you get your income minus expenses, and you come up with an amount or a balance. So if the balance is positive, that means you're bringing in more money than expenses that are going out. And now you can use that extra money, let's say it's $1,000 a month, for your goal, whatever your goal is. If the verdict is the other way around, if you have more expenses than money coming in, and it's a negative balance, that means that you don't have money to put away for your goal. So this is where the work comes in and saying, okay, what do I need to do? So I can do one of two things. There's only one of two things I can do. Either I can increase my income, right? And that's sometimes hard to do, right? Because you can only work so many hours in a day. You can take on another job, but then that takes away from family commitments and things like that. And again, you can only work so many hours of the day. So the income piece, unless you get another job that pays more or get a promotion, you can't continue to do that all the time, because at some point in time, you're not going to be able to be promoted to the CEO of the company, right? So the income one is a bit, tricky. There's only so much you can do. So the other thing you can do is look at expenses. This is where you can do a lot. And that's what we're going to spend most of the class talking about. This is where you have to look at and say, okay, based on what I spent last year or last month or the last couple of months, what changes do I have to make in my life? And this is where it kind of gets difficult, especially if you're dealing with your family members, right? Because people in your family may not agree with it. But if you're taking control of your finances, the only way you can do that is to start making some changes to the expense category. Okay? And this is what companies do all the time, right? They find out that the expenses are too high, right? Got to start cutting expenses, right? Cutting workforce, right? That's one way to do it. Employees are the biggest cost usually in a company, labor costs. So by cutting employees, if you can afford to do it as a company, that's what they do, right? They don't spend as much on capital, right? Maybe there was a project that they need to do in the plant. Well, can't do it next year. We don't have enough money. Put it off till next year. Well, you can only do that so many years, because if you don't add to the plant and keep it maintained, what happens?
Breaks down.
It breaks down, and then you have more problems. It's no different than your car, right?
Loss of production.
I'm sorry?
Unplanned downtime.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's no different than your car, right? You can only put off the maintenance for a while, but eventually if you don't do maintenance, it's going to break down. So you need to start making some big decisions about expenses. Okay? So let's go through some of these and see what we can do. So here is on page 48 is creating your spending plan. Okay. If you go to page 49, here are some of the things that people, again, can do. Buying no-name products. People know what no-name products are? What are they? I'm sorry? No brand, yeah. So it's kind of interesting that people sometimes don't understand that that product comes typically from the same plant that a brand name product comes. A lot of times. The only thing that's different is the label, right? But the brand name is a little bit more expensive because they spend a lot of money on advertising, marketing, that type of thing, and also selling to us as consumers that that's a superior product. Now, in some cases it is, like there's products that are inferior, but for when it comes to no name brand on a lot of things, it's typically the same. Okay? This is very important when it comes to drugs. Go ahead.
That kind of be like buying Motrin and then ibuprofen.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was just going to talk about drugs. So what ends up happening is drug companies, next to insurance companies and banks, make billions of dollars a year. They spend a lot of money on research and they develop a drug. And it becomes a blockbuster drug, and it's the brand name. And then what happens is that they have a protection on that drug for a certain amount of years. It's called a patent. But then after that patent is finished, 7, 8 years, all these other drug companies produce what's called a generic drug. So a generic drug is exactly the same ingredients as the brand name, but it's typically 10 to 70% less, which is sometimes like food, right? A can of carrots is a can of carrots, right? Now the taste might be a little bit different because they use different salts and things like that in it, but it's really carrots, okay? So we buy a lot of things at brand names where you can buy no name and save a lot of money. Now, sometimes, like I said, you got to convince the rest of your family that it's the same. It's not an easy thing, but that's one way to save. Okay. Reducing water and electricity consumption. That's another one. Right? People waste a lot of electricity, a lot of water. Right? I'm not telling you to take a shower with only a liter of water, but you know, there's people, I know my little guy, he's in the shower like 20 minutes. Like I got to be banging on the door. What are you doing in there? Right? Lights. Right? In my house, it's always Christmas.
Yeah.
Inside the house, all year round. Right? Because the lights are always on. Right? So we waste a lot that way. Using public transport as much as possible and driving the car as little as possible. You know, and that all depends on the public transportation system too in the city. Obviously in bigger cities, it's a lot better with subways and things like that. Using as many public programs as possible. Getting information from a community health center for purchasing items such as car seats, things like that. And borrowing books and movies from libraries and those type of things. Okay. So let's go to page 51. Making your spending plan work. So once you know when and how you're going to pay your expenses, you may be looking for a way to make it easier to track them. Okay, so there's different tracking methods. One is called the envelope method. Okay, you can put cash in separate envelopes for each expense category. And, you know, once that money is gone from there, you're done for that. Okay, that's just one system. The electronic method, use a spreadsheet to track expenses month by month. There's a checkbook record method where you're recording things. This is a good one, the receipt method. I know when I started doing budgeting, I just kept all my receipts. I know lots of people just throw them away, but instead of writing everything down, I just kept a receipt. You know, bought something, you know, and then you just put them in an envelope. You have different envelopes, entertainment, food, gas, whatever. And then at the end of the month, you know exactly what you've spent. Okay? So those are just different ways to kind of do it. So why don't we just, sorry, Bart.
Related to, I used to remember that 5 years ago, I started doing that, getting all my receipts, taking track of everything, right? But it's at least it didn't work for me because you need to make a budget.
Right.
You know, okay, my income was 100,000, and then my expenses were 105. You keep track of every single expense, but how can you actually say what I'm doing wrong if you don't do your budget? And actually, we did that with my wife last year, and we said, oh no, we don't spend too much fast food. We rarely go to buy coffees. We rarely go buy some food outside. And then when you start getting track and making a budget, it just comes to realize all what we're talking about. Like, to make this look real, you need to, like, we're in that process right now, and we said, like, just in January, we stick to $400 budget for groceries, and we say, okay, we can do that $100 a week. We can manage to do that. We stick on January and we spend that amount on groceries, but we spend $500 just in fast food.
Exactly.
But if you ask us, no, we rarely go. But if you keep adding one coffee, one other donut, and just keeps adding, then on February we break down that to the half. We again stick to the groceries in the same amount, and then on March we drop down to from $500 to $55 on March, and we are sticking to the same rate in groceries. And it's not that we're on diet; it's just that we're sticking to a budget and we're doing that plan on looking what is expenses.
No, exactly. But the point is that if you never do that, you don't know where you're spending money, and that's the biggest problem with people, right? Money just comes in and then you just go and buy stuff, right? You go to the grocery store and you got to buy groceries, of course. Everybody's got to eat, but you just buy whatever, right? You don't say, okay, like you said, I only have whatever, $250 to spend this shopping trip this week. Because if you don't even have that in your mind, you're just going to buy whatever, right? If you don't know how much you're spending on restaurants, everybody always thinks that they spend a lot less than they actually do on things. Go ahead.
How much should two people averagely spend on groceries?
Oh, good question. Do you eat a lot?
No, like an average. Like
It all depends on what you're buying, right?
Yeah.
This goes back to what, lifestyle choices, right? So this is not about like, what's right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's more about, what's good for you based on your lifestyle, right? Like, I mean, there's people that want just the best of everything, and that's okay, right? But you may have to spend less on something else if you want to do that. If you want to buy organic food all the time, and I'm for organic food, don't get me wrong, okay? But it can get pretty expensive, right? So if you want to do that, because that's important, that's not a problem, but you may have to spend less going out, or you may have to want to go on a vacation maybe only once a year rather than 3 times a year, right? It's all so it's a good question, but this is where you have to sit down as a family and talk about it and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. It may mean that we're not going to buy the best meat all the time, right? It may mean that we're going to go out for dinner maybe once a month rather than once a week, right? So that's the neat thing about financial planning and stuff. It's not one thing is good for everybody. What's good for you may not be good for me, and what's good at one time is not good for all the time, right? How many students make a lot of sacrifices when they're going to school, but then when they get a job, they're able to eat better, right? Go on more vacations, have a vehicle, all that stuff, right? So this is where you sit down and you look at, okay, what do I want? What are my goals? And based on my goals, and if you're into health and that, well, you're going to have different costs associated with that versus someone that says, okay, I just want to have really good food. Doesn't have to be the best of everything, right? Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. It's really interesting when you get to level 2, which I hope you will. We talk about in the first lesson, we talk about core values. And this is exactly what we're getting at. What kind of person are you when it comes to that? Are you the kind of person that's very thrifty, right? And when I say thrifty, I don't mean cheap. I mean, you go and look for deals at the grocery store versus it doesn't matter, right? I have friends that say, whatever the price is, I got to buy it. Well, yeah, to a certain point, that's good. But, well, are you going to buy that at whatever price it is? Probably not, right? So your core value around finances affects a lot about where you are financially. And it comes a lot when you do a budget. Okay, once you do this exercise where you actually track your expenses for a couple of months and you realize, okay, this is where the money's going, that's when it's a wake-up call to say, I need to do something different. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 10 after and we'll continue, okay? If you haven't handed in your assignment, can you do that now?
Actually, another interesting about the budgeting plans, groceries, for example, we plan before doing the groceries. We actually make the list with all the phone maps and everything. So we can go and find where the deals are, make all the budget, and we like save like $200. Planning the right thing, the right place to buy, save $200.
But if you never even think of it, So the cost, I'd say, is about 33 to 34%. And that includes wages and benefits. Okay, so you're saying how much is profit? So because the big point is the price of oil, right? So if you look at $60 $80 so we make about $40. So in Canada, the reason why we are oil is on because trees are right. So now that we're not and now because of the pipeline,
but I know people
the West Coast to go to or
There's a new like
Well, because it's not just Alberta, it's federal.
the sugar is I think but I have
For both spouses. So you can use the budget.
I love last year I suppose we had like 9 or I didn't want to
Okay, why don't we get started again? Okay, so if we go to page 56. Okay, so when people look at their expenses versus their income and they track them, okay, sometimes, like we said, you got to make some changes to meet your financial goals. Okay, and what ends up happening is that a lot of people get surprised, like we said, about how much they're spending on certain things, but they've never kept track of that. But there's different things that you can do. Just on the right-hand side, for example, if you like good food and dining out, you know, a couple of times a month, you could cut it down to once a month, right? Nobody is saying that you can't do some of the stuff that you love to do, right? Because life needs to be fun too, right? We're not trying to get you to take everything out. Go to less expensive restaurants. Go out just for dessert. This is a good one. Organize a dinner group where everybody makes food. You know, getting takeout is a little bit cheaper. Buying prepared food, making food at home, right? All those type of things is one way to still get entertainment of eating out and dining and stuff, but not the cost, okay? Just look on page 57. This was kind of interesting. So, you know, people say, you know, go to the vending machine. It's only, you a chocolate bar or chips. But if you do that every day, 5 days a week, that's over $500. Okay, I don't have to talk about coffee. I mean, $2 for a coffee is pretty cheap nowadays. You go to Starbucks every day, and you're talking, what, $4 to $6, depending on what you buy, right? Take out lunch, pack of cigarettes. If you're smoking, I think it's even more, right? Those type of things, okay? So if we go to page 59, now we get into tips on how to help you save on money. Okay, so for housing, a large portion of the average household budget goes toward providing a roof over our head, whether it's your own home or you're renting. Look for ways to cut expenses in this area to make a difference. If you're renting, you could reduce your rent by doing odd jobs around your building, if you could do that. If you own your own home, you could rent out a room in your home that you're not using. Another idea is to do repairs yourself. Okay, don't kill yourself, electrocute yourself, but a lot of people start doing their own kind of home maintenance, and that's good. There's a lot of free seminars on do-it-yourself things. You can ask friends, okay? When it comes to utilities, this is a big one here. So tips on keeping your electricity and natural gas costs down. Turn off unused lights and electrical equipment. Of course, replace the 100-watt bulbs with more energy-efficient bulbs. That's all you can buy now. Okay. Check the seals on your fridge, your oven, and your freezer, especially in the winter. Even a small gap lets out a lot of heat and cold. Hot water tanks should be set at no higher than 50 degrees Celsius. Refrigerators at 3 degrees Celsius. And freezers at -18. This is a big one. Checking your furnace regularly, especially the filters. There's people that never change their filter. So what ends up happening is the furnace works harder. If it works harder, it uses more energy. Use an electric heater only until the chill is gone in a room. This is a good one. Move all furniture at least 30 centimeters away from the heaters and registers to make sure the heat is flowing efficiently. Some people put their furniture over the registers and the heat doesn't come out. Close the drapes as soon as the sun goes down in the winter to keep the warm air in the room. Use portable fans. Anybody know what a door sock is? A door sock? So it's a long piece of material. It's stuffed with, either bird seed, even socks itself, and you just put it at the bottom. You put it at the bottom of the door so the cold doesn't come in. Okay. Okay. Use an indoor appliance timer. Okay. Use an indoor appliance timer to turn on lamps off and on, especially when you're not around, and also an outdoor timer. Okay. Tips for keeping water costs down. Put dishes in a drainer and pour out a bowl of water over them. When using the dishwasher, run the shortest wash cycle possible. You'll notice in a lot of dishwashers, like the cycle is quite high in terms of timing. Put it down to the shortest wash cycle. Check toilets regularly, pipes and faucets for leaks, and repair them. Install low flow shower heads and flow reducing devices on taps. Okay, for telephone, cable, and internet, check what you need. So a lot of people, they buy packages and they've got more channels than they really need. I know a lot of people are getting away from cable, getting a Netflix, whatever, whatever kind of, but don't pay for stuff that you're not using is the whole point of this, right? And, a lot of these cable companies use things where, if you want a certain channel, you got to buy the whole package. See if you can get away with not having to do that, okay? Reduce long distance charges by using a different phone company. Well, nowadays people can use, apps like WhatsApp and Skype. So the whole long distance phone call thing is, it's not like when I was growing up. I remember calling relatives in Italy and it was like, telling my mother, hurry up, like it's $8 a minute. Just say hello and goodbye, right? Right? But now you can talk as much as you want with WhatsApp for free and those type of things. So, not a lot of money to be saved on that. This is a big one. They're saying that more and more people are canceling their landline at home because everybody in the house has a cell phone. Okay, when was the last time you used your landline? Exactly. Okay. So here, let's talk about food for a bit. Buying food is not optional, obviously. Is it okay? Okay. Tips for stretching your food dollars. Try to plan your meals for a week at a time and then shop just once a week. So there's people that go to the grocery store almost every second day. But if you do it once a week and plan your week, it's a lot cheaper. Okay. Never shop when you're hungry. Okay. Make a list. Just talking to Mario here. Make a list and stick to it. If you make a list, you're likely not to do a lot of impulse buying. Take advantage of coupons, but only for items that you really want, right? Don't buy it just because you can get 10 cents off of it, right? So this is a good thing. Like I know a lot of people go to Costco, they go to Edmonton, and they end up buying, right? They end up buying $300 worth of stuff, and you got, 80 cans of mushrooms, and you got toothpaste for the next year, 2 years, right? So you got to be careful. I mean, that's why, at Costco, I mean, it's a good place when you're shopping for big quantities, if you have big families, that type of thing. But, if you've got a small family, you might not be ahead, okay? At Costco, you know how they make most of their money? How do they make it? Anybody know? Sorry? Their membership fee. That's their biggest item. Okay, so think about that. Because there's people that get a membership fee and then go to Costco, especially up here, go to Edmonton maybe once or twice a year. Is it worth it? Probably not. Okay. But again, it depends on your personal situation. I'm not trying to get you to have to go to Costco, right? But there's people that end up, every time I've gone to Costco, I bought more stuff than I ever need, right? Okay. Consider choosing foods that are on sale or in season. Ready? Save money by purchasing tougher cuts of meat. Choose a warehouse or superstore for bulk buying rather than shopping at the corner convenience stores where costs per item are much higher. So convenience stores are called convenience stores because they're there for your convenience if you don't have something. You shouldn't be doing your shopping there because it can get really expensive. Use coupons. We talked about that. Frequent shopper programs. Compare prices on store brands, name brands, and no-name brands. We talked a little bit about that. Okay? Usually not a lot of difference, but sometimes can be a lot of cost. Beware of marketing strategies such as placement of items near the till, on your way out, end of the aisle, middle shelf items, and island displays. These items usually cost more and encourage impulse buying. So remember, marketing, these companies have studied this for years. They know exactly when you come into the store where you're going to go in first, right? Where you're going to go next. And they put a lot of high price items when you're waiting to go through the line. They put a lot of items that are high price at eye level, those type of things. You got to be wary of that, okay? Another thing that I like to make sure people understand is can we just go to that thing there? Yeah. Are people aware of the scanning code of practice? Okay. So let me explain what that is, because some people don't even know. So I was at, I think it was a Shoppers Drug Mart about a couple of years ago, and there was ice cream on sale. So I love ice cream. So Breyer's ice cream was on sale for $3. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to buy a couple. That's a good deal, right? So I go to the checkout. They scan the price, and it comes up to $6. So I tell the attendant there, who was a young kid, that I think you made a mistake because it's saying $3. So he goes, oh, okay, let me check. So he goes and checks, and he says, yeah, you're right. Sorry, sir, right? We made a mistake. So he charges me $3 for each for the 2 ice cream. And I said, oh, no, there's actually you're supposed to give me that item for free, because there's a scanning code of practice that came out several years ago. So this is when, you know that barcode that you see on all the products? Okay, when I was a kid, there was no barcodes. There was actually a price. And people would put a price on every item, okay? But that costs a lot of money because you got to pay people to do that. So they came up with this universal price code on every product that's associated with the price. But the government was kind of concerned about that because they thought, okay, these retailers are going to rip people off. So the retailer said, okay, we'll make an agreement. We'll have an ethical practice that if the price is different than what's on the shelf, we'll give the customer, if it's less than $10 the price of that item, we'll give it to them for free. Okay? And if it's more than $10, then you get $10 off of that. Okay? So a lot of people don't know about that. So I told this guy that, and he goes, no. And I go, I want to talk to your manager. Right? I said, you have to give me that product for free. Now, whenever you would challenge them on that, they'll always say, no. But just ask to speak to the manager. So the manager comes, and of course, they know the practice, but they probably tell their cashiers that, we made a mistake, just put it at the regular price, but don't give them the stuff for free. Okay? So you should be seeing this on a lot of stores. Okay? It's called the scanning code of practice. This is a bad picture. I took it just at the Shoppers Drug Mart. Okay? If the scan price of a non-price ticketed item is higher than the shelf price or any other displayed price, the customer is entitled to receive the first item for free, up to a maximum of $10. If the item is more than $10, the customer is entitled to $10 off the lowest advertised price. If you have a problem and it can be resolved at the store level, please call this 1-800 number. Okay? So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you don't even remember that it was a sale price when you go to the cashier, forget it, right? And like I was saying last week, if you don't take care of your finances, nobody else will, right? But this is actually a code of practice, and it happens all the time. Because for every person like me that probably remembered, there's probably another guy that's just buying, that's buying their groceries, and the price is a lot of times, I'll bet you every time you go shopping, at least one item in your shopping cart is coded at a wrong price. And you're not going to know that unless you remember.
What is a non-price ticketed item?
Non-price,
the first line, very first sentence.
It is
If the scan price of non-price.
Yeah, so it doesn't have a price. The item doesn't have a price. They don't put a price on every item. There's only the barcode. There's only the barcode. Okay. But the barcode could be coded to charge $6. Yeah. But they put on there that's on sale for $3.
Yes. Okay.
Okay? Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So they're not changing in their system. Yeah. And I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, but sometimes I'm sure they are. Because like I said, for every person that remembers, there's probably 9 that don't.
No. Yeah.
Right? So people just buy, right? You had a question?
Yeah, is this to like every single store you go
No.
to, or is it?
No. There's a lot of the major retailers are part of this, and the reason they're part of it is because they want to show that the customer, they have confidence. Okay, but not every store does it. But big stores, Superstore, Shoppers Drug Mart, all of them will do it. Okay, but you got to know about it, and sometimes you have to raise a bit of stink.
Yeah.
So what I usually do is I say, yeah, not a problem. Okay, they give me the free ice cream, and then what I do is I go back the next day. Okay, because usually they haven't changed the price, and we go through the same thing, and I get my ice cream for free for a week.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
No, but seriously, they don't have time. It's a big deal for them to have to change it, all that kind of stuff. But my point is that it's not a big deal. It's only $3. But like again, if you're losing $3 to $5, $10 a week over the course of the year, now you're talking lots of money, right? So this is one of the things that you want to be careful about. Go back to the. Okay. Okay, so the other thing is check discount bins. This is important. Learn to be a label reader and watch the scanner. We just talked about that. Bring store flyers to confirm prices. Okay. The next page is just some basic stuff. Okay, when it comes to laundry, everybody washes their clothes, I think. Use half of the recommended amount of detergent.
Really?
Exactly. So on the boxes of Tide and every other, right? You should actually use half of that. Go ahead.
So I'll be living in an apartment that you have to pay for laundry.
Okay.
So what do you suggest for that? So it'd be $5 to like wash and dry.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So what you want to do is make sure that you have your loads are full, right? Right? That's the biggest thing, right?
okay, so there's like no way around
No. Okay. Buy a large. Listen up, guys. Buy a large no-name bottle of liquid fabric softener, and drop a couple teaspoons on a clean washcloth or rag. Okay, and this reduces static. So instead of buying, the expensive cling-free and all that stuff, spray new or freshly washed sneakers with starch so it'll stay cleaner longer. Okay, childcare. This one gets a little bit tougher, especially in Fort McMurray. But this could be a very big expense. It talks about starting a child care co-op where you get together with a group of families and parents and do that. Okay, transportation. Okay, one option for reducing transportation costs is to carpool. This is good if you're again going to university or the same college, that type of thing, same work. Okay. Clothing and footwear. Okay. Sales can be a great way to save money on clothing and footwear. Plus, there's a variety of secondhand stores, if that's okay with you, with clothing of all ages. There's a lot of people that are giving away clothes on Facebook. All you have to do is pick it up, that type of thing. Garage sales, sometimes you get good deals at that. Okay. Insurance costs. Insurance costs are not flexible. Make sure that you're not paying for coverage that you don't need. We're going to talk about that in a few lessons, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. Taxes, education, medical. Medical is very important. Shop around to compare prices. So one thing about drugs, for example, is when you go to a pharmacy, they charge you what's called a dispensing fee. A dispensing fee is what the pharmacist charges to fill that prescription. So they can range, dispensing fees can range from a few bucks, $5, all the way to $22. Okay. Anybody know what the average dispensing fee in Fort McMurray is? $11. $11. Okay. So, you know, you can go to a pharmacy that charges more than that if you want, but you should be asking your pharmacist what's the dispensing fee. Because sometimes, depending on the plan that you're on with your company, or if you're not on a plan, sometimes the cost of the dispensing fee might be more than the actual medicine that you're buying. Okay? So you got to be careful about that. Remember, if you don't take care of your money, who's going to? No one.
Is it any rules that they can't charge more than $11 or?
Yeah, no, it's based on consumer. So this is the problem with us, is that we don't ask enough questions, right? It's the same when you go to the dentist, right? The big thing about dentists right now is in Alberta, I'll go off a little bit here, talk about that. Anybody, and no one's a dentist here, right?
No.
Okay, so dentists in Alberta, in most provinces in the country, there's a fee guide put out by the dental association in that province. Okay, and it says that for this procedure you charge whatever, let's say $100. Now the dentists don't have to abide by that, but this is what they're saying that you should do. Now in Alberta, we haven't had a dental fee guide, I think, for 20 years. So in Alberta, we pay the highest in dental costs in Canada. So a year ago, the Alberta Dental Association finally came up with a fee guide. But dentists, again, don't have to go by it.
Yeah, they charge more.
It's up to you. So what ends up happening is that companies that have dental plans, you know, they only cover now to that fee guide. So you go and you get a teeth cleaning and it comes up to $125, and you get upset because now you're paying $25 more than you used to. And the dentist says, or the office says, well, it's your company. It's not your company that's doing that. It's really the fee guide, and you're charging above the fee guide. So you have an option. You can either pay it, or you can look for a dentist that's charging to the fee guide. But if you don't shop around, if you don't ask questions, you're going to pay the $25 extra and be upset at your company. Okay? So, enough on medical. Recreation. Most of this depends on your spending priorities. Some options include taking a local vacation by car instead, or flying to a destination, or buying used sports equipment instead of new. There's programs that are run by the municipality. Okay. Tips on low-cost recreation: walk or jog through the park or pathway. This is community skating, borrow books, form an adult reading group, attend school or university sporting events. That's really good. You know, support Keano College. You know, instead of going to Edmonton and spending, I don't know who can afford to go to an Oilers game nowadays, but very expensive. You know, go to the college, university. The athletes are all amateurs and they're really good, and it's a good time. Okay. Gifts. This is what I was talking about earlier, right? Tips for managing gift buying. If you're exchanging gifts with someone else, sit down well before the event and set a realistic price range. So this is when you get it, especially at Christmas, people have these things where you just exchange. You know, someone buys you a gift for $50 and, you know, you spent maybe $100 on them, right? So you got to make the rules up front. Use your budget guidelines and set aside money each month for gifts. Make cards instead of buying them. See if you and others can put money together for special occasions. This is good for like kind of bridal showers or baby showers. You know, you get together, put the money together, buy something good. Take advantage of free gift offers when you're purchasing other things. Okay. Okay, car. I think we talked enough about car, special fees, furniture and appliances. Okay, boosting your income. Again, this is not a lot of stuff here because it's more around, you know, renting out something in your home or doing some other odd jobs. We're going to talk a lot about bank credit in the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk about that. So any questions on budgeting? No questions. Do you think you can do it? Do you think you will do it? Okay, it's one of those things, like I said, that it's almost like exercising. You know, it's hard to do it, but once you start doing it and you get a feel for it, and just like you were talking, Mario, once you realize how much it's paying off, you're going to probably continue to do it. And like I said, I'll bring some names of some apps next week, but you don't have to get too crazy about this, right? Don't get too technical about it, because if you do, you'll just lose interest. Just track your expenses for a couple of months, see where you're spending the money, and then start doing some things, start making some changes in your spending so that you could have more money at the end of the month so that you can do some of your goals. Okay. So, you take one of those. Okay, so I'm going to just pass out the assignment for budgeting. Sure. Yes. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the assignment for budget. So again, pretty easy. When you're referring to goals, what does SMART mean? Money in is defined as an expense, true or false. Income less expenses equals a balance, true or false. A positive balance means one of those. Examples of expenses include, circle the ones that apply. Tracking your expenses can be done using the following methods. You can look at it all up. Okay, so then question number 7. Prepare a monthly income statement for this individual. You have to put in all the income and all the expenses. Take the expenses away from income and see what you get. And then tell me 1 or 2 things you learned about budgeting from this lesson and what actions or steps you will take because of what you learned in the lesson. So pretty basic. And also do your financially in tune assignment. And if you have any questions, please give me a call or just email me. And so next week, we're going to talk about credit. Credit is one of those lessons that you'll really want to be up on, because banks have to open up an account for you if you want, but they don't have to lend you money. Okay? So it's really important that you have good credit rating in Canada to get a loan. So we're going to talk a lot about your credit report how to build a good credit report, and how to increase your credit rating score. Okay? Any questions before we go? Go ahead.
Question 6, we have to explain the OCWC.
No, just circle, sorry. Just circle the ones that apply. Okay? Good question. Sorry I didn't make that clear. Question number 6, you're only circling, you're not explaining anything. Okay, any other questions?
Income and expense, whatever the income and expense statement, it's a personal income or family income?
No, it's based on the example.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are all examples of either income or expenses. Put them on the right side. Okay? Okay, good. Thank you. Have a good week. We'll see you next week. Thanks. See you. Look at all the information you get.
I don't know what my mom pays for the water bills and all those bills. And all I pay for is like if I want new clothes or pick up or go up.
Take advantage of that because now you can save. That's my regret. I didn't save this. Now I know. Like keep using that. That's not
Start using those principles. Is that thing off?
Why are you saying this?
Budgeting for university.